did it, Josh.
Emma did it.
We follow Rome. Follow the Roman Empire. Are you with the Roman Empire? Are you with the Empire? So when the Yanks play?
Tomorrow,
Tomorrow, really? Boy,
7:30.
boy. I'll read you guys to get there. You have a heart attack.
Shalom.
Shalom.
This is Happy Sabbath, everybody.
All praises. You know what I read today, folks, viewers? Those who praise the Most High are blessed in the Lord. Isn't that awesome? Isn't that awesome to keep the Lord, to keep the Sabbath, to keep everything holy as much as we can in these terrible days we live in?
So we like to give all honor and all praise tonight to the Most High God of heaven and earth, Ahayah through His Son Yashayah, and the Holy Spirit through the Ruach Kudash for this opportunity to be on in front of you.
Go ahead, Josh. Go ahead.
We started a new chapter in pagan Christianity, in the pagan Christianity book. We're going to continue Christian doctrine swelling the cranium. Okay. Christian education swelling the cranium. So we start some brief stuff talking about the origin, or in our Christian origin series, going into the history of how different traditions or customs started from Christianity. We're talking about Christian education, and we read today. For example, I'll just read a little snippet. Education qualifies a person to do the Lord's work. Unless a Christian has graduated from seminary, he or she is viewed as a para-minister, a pseudo-Christian, baptized, administer the Lord's Supper. He or she has not been formally trained to do such things. And we're going to continue with that, going into different concepts of education, or where in the minds of people, excuse me, I just woke up. In the minds of most people, unless you are trained or theologically taught from a Bible seminary, you can't. I mean, you can, but you won't be viewed as a full minister because you're not trained on, as we read in the pagan Christianity last night. The early followers of Christ, the teaching they did was not mechanical, robotic, or intellectually based. It was spiritual, aimed at the mind, and practical, meaning they taught you practical things of how to live and how to operate in life, you how to really deal with life. Seminary teaches people how to be mechanical and systematic, almost as if you're programming a robot. That's why if you step into churches, you feel like a robotic spirit coming from the pastor and the elders. You don't even in every church, any um um any denomination, you feel that same robotic sense of feeling, robotic spirit.
Yes, sir.
And
bring it, Josh.
And again, people don't talk like that, animated and eloquent and careful with every word they say. And I do agree we should be
seasoned with salt.
We should season our words with salt and tend. The apostles, the apostles and Christ did not speak or talk like your pastor was trained to speak like and talk like. We know this because what was I gonna say?
Sorry. You can see yourself. Go ahead, Josh.
So, because the Bible says that Christ's words were powerful and people said of the Messiah, he doesn't teach but he teaches as one with power and authority.
That's right.
In other words, what they're really saying is Christ was authentic and sincere with his teaching.
Right.
He wasn't someone who was trying to pretend like he's super educated and deep.
People yelled when he was coming. Today, they get flyers out, radio. Hey, I'm going to be there. The great preacher's going to be there. Heaven is at hand. Go where? Wherever you go. You don't need an audience. You don't have to yell and tell people, here I am. That's pride. That's Christian pride.
So,
that's what they do.
We understand excuse me, what was I saying? Christ, the people said that Christ taught with power and authority as one sent from God, and not as the scribes and Pharisees. Why? Because the scribes and Pharisees were what we would call modern theologians. They taught very robotic and systematic and practical, and which produced a people that didn't keep the laws of God.
That's right.
So theological trained people, Christ never had a problem with the tax collectors, the publicans, and normal people who he could reason with and talk with. The people that always he had a problem with were the formally trained theologians. Right? That's what a Pharisee pretty much is, a formally trained theologian.
That's who he came up with. That's who they came up against.
Those are the ones who stirred the people up to kill him.
That's right.
Right? Because they were him taking away their place in their nation. John 11:46 and 47. Read that. Then we'll go into the book.
Because Christ had truth. No one wanted truth then too, especially the Pharisees.
No, the people wanted truth. The Pharisees, the Pharisees didn't want the truth because it would take away their financial prosperity.
Right, there you go. That's right. And they were run by Rome. Where we go?
Chapter 11, 46 and 47, Dad.
Okay, 11, 46, 47. So the most, Mashiach had his hands full too, with people who were coming against his teaching.
And I have no problem with any pastor.
That's right.
He sincerely went to those places, right?
What verses again?
46 and 47.
11, 46,
Hold
47.
on.
Yeah, wait.
So this is not a slant against your pastor or a pastor. It's a sincere concept of being taught how to better his people. But that has not happened. the spirit or the roboticness of the person is a fruit of the pastor. The way he trains, and that's, listen to this. The way you act in church, almost robotic and unspiritual,
Come on.
is the way the seminary trained him to be.
That's right.
Not spontaneous.
Come on. That's right.
Rational and mechanical.
That's right. Absolutely.
Not spiritual, spontaneous.
That's right.
And practical, like the early the apostles taught people.
That's right.
To be.
Right.
Okay.
11, I think, right?
Yeah, 11,
46 and 47, right?
Yep.
Read.
But some of them went their ways to the Pharisees and told them what things Yashayah had done.
Mm-hmm.
Then gathered the chief priests and the Pharisees in council and said, what do we? For this man doeth many miracles.
So we can't explain the power and the authority that this man. Why? Because we are. In other words, whatever your pastor says is what it is. It's not what the Bible says that what it is. And honestly, whenever you meet Christians, what do they say first? My pastor said.
Mm-hmm.
My pastor says this. My pastor says that.
What about the word?
My pastor.
What does the word say?
My pastor said. Right? And or what church do you go to? As if a pastor and a church ties you to God.
Yeah.
See, that's mechanically trained into you, not solely by a pastor, but by being programmed into the church system.
That's right.
Verse
48.
If you let him thus alone.
So, in other words, if we don't do nothing about this brother doing what he's doing, read.
All men will believe on him.
So, in other words, all men will believe on him. Why? Because he's teaching the truth.
And the Romans shall.
And the who?
And the Romans shall come and take him away. Well,
no, take away.
Take him away. Take
away both our place and nation. It's okay.
So they both will take away our place and our nation.
Look,
in other words,
that's all they were worried about. Mm-hmm.
They weren't worried about the people.
Mm-hmm. Just like today.
They were worried about having their financial future ruined.
And the status.
I got to say this. Listen, viewers. If the Black Christ showed up on any church on Sunday in this world, they'd hang him. They throw him out. That's right.
That's not my Jesus.
Yeah, it's not my Christ.
And one of them named Caiaphas.
Stop.
Yeah.
So that's all I needed. So the purpose of Christ, the purpose was this. So these wise theologians of the Bible couldn't handle the truth that Christ brought.
That's right. Believe on him. Everything that he did, Christian. Law, Sabbath, food, eating clean. Everything he did, believe on him. Well, Christ was a Christian. There's nowhere in the Bible that says he's a Christian.
So we understand that the Pharisees were not so much threatened that Christ was teaching people. It was that he was eventually going to harm their money, their financial prosperity.
That's right.
That's why when Christ, but the Pharisees, the religious system uses the church or the church, the assembly as a prosperity tool to get wealthy.
Wow. Awesome, Josh.
That's just like today. Trust, the only reason your pastor asks for your money is because he has a spirit of greed and he needs your money. God has no need of your money. What good is paper to God?
That's right.
When he owns the whole earth?
That's right.
He doesn't. The man needs your money.
They'll try to put a curse on you and a dilemma, guilt Bibles. What about the poor who are really in this art? They really want to come to a church like yours, some building, and feel, right, Tony, neglected, feel like not wanted, because that's what it makes you feel. That's what it's set up to do. It's to make you feel guilty. Not teaching the Bible, a Christian Bible, and it's not. It's a nation and a people. I saw that right away.
So before we go into,
Where are we going?
let's go to Exodus 20,
Exodus 20.
verse 1. Read.
The sad part about it, there are pastors, very few that don't know, but most know the truth, that they should keep the law. And this pastor, if you're listening, and you're going to give an account. So, all right, where are we going, George?
Verse 1.
All right. And the Most High spake all these words, saying, got it, Mary? I am the Most High thy power, which have brought thee out.
21, right?
No, 20. You said the verse, the top one. Yeah, I'm starting.
20 is, and God spake.
I just said that. And the Most High spake all these words, saying, I am the Most High thy power, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. All right?
So use God before the Most High.
That's right. No other God.
Because there are many gods and many false gods
Mhm.
and concepts of gods.
That's right.
And every God, besides the God of the Bible, has no laws or requirements of you. See, the reason people really hate the Bible
Come on.
and don't like it, because the God of the Bible has rules.
He erased
And-
the God of the Bible out.
And you don't like to have a person or a being tell you how to live your life.
Wow.
When it gets down to brass taxes, that's what it is. You don't want to be told what to do.
Wow.
Read.
Mary?
Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images.
Okay, why?
Image. It's all right. Image. It's all right.
Okay, so why? Because an image is an impersonal object, inanimate object, and it has,
God that you believe. And it's not the God you believe.
for example,
Go ahead.
the world has a concept or an idol of what the Messiah looks like,
That's
a
right.
hippie-looking white guy. Well, the Bible clearly says that's not what Christ looks like.
That's right.
Okay, Christ has woolly hair and skin as if it burned in a furnace, brown. What we would term as being black. Christ was a black man according to the Bible. Many people will not admit it, but they believe God is a white man, which doesn't fit into the Bible because white systematic thought is anti-scriptural. Promote all foods here in America. Shellfish, pork, Sunday worship, freedom of religion. The Bible doesn't teach freedom of religion.
That's right.
The Bible teaches theocracy. What we would, the term, that's a human term for a government. The Bible says, thou shalt have no other gods before me, and thou shalt not make unto thyself any graven image of anything. that is the heavens above, that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the waters beneath, under the heavens.
So good.
You can't make images of actually, that's the pagan god Dagon. I'm sure past pastors have told you that that was a symbol of the early church. No, it's not. Nowhere in the Bible does it say they use a fish as one of their symbols.
Have mercy, Most High.
So we are not to have any images of anything. Especially religious imagery, because religious imagery molds how you look at and what you see in the Bible. Like, for example, from a young age, when we saw movies like Cecil D. DeMille, Ten Commandments, everyone believes were Caucasians, and people try to get around the physical display by the, it had a lot of people in it, the wrong ethnicity in it, or start to mold the idea in their mind that Caucasians wrote the Bible. And I'll just use the dietary laws as an example. The American society has no dietary law, meaning they don't tell you not to eat anything. They actually promote all type of foods, shellfish. There's even people who eat octopuses and squid, crawfish, which is a shellfish, pork. So it's strange to a person to hear about a God forbidding you from eating foods that are bad for you, but yet your doctor will say the same. If you go to a doctor and honestly ask him what is out of 100, that doctor will tell you honestly, don't eat pork, shellfish, or anything that does not have scales and fins.
That's right.
And don't eat pork because a pig is a scavenger animal. Now, he didn't say don't eat meat. He said don't eat pork.
That's right.
First of all, pork and shellfish is not meat. They're scavengers. Lobsters, crabs,
Absolutely,
are scavengers. They are designed to live on the bottom of the ocean.
they're created.
No, I mean, it will, but it doesn't change what God said about it.
Right. You can dice it, slice it. It's still a pig.
Verse 4, Mom.
Therefore,
5.
Go ahead, Mary.
thou shalt not bow down thy.
So you can't make an image, or you
What's
can't
this?
bow down.
Hold on.
So wait a minute. Bowing down means
Go ahead.
when you pray or when you do
Mhm.
your devotional time, what is in your mind? Because you don't need an image in front of you to worship it.
No, that's right. It's in your mind already.
If it's ingrained in your mind, when you
Mhm.
pray, you're praying to an image concept of God.
Let me make it plain and simple, Josh. You go to church, the pastor tells you to come up to the soldered iron seared into you since you're a baby. So when you come to the altar, you think you're doing right, Mary? You bow down, right, to an image. That's idolatry, and you don't realize you're doing it. What's it say? Thou shalt not what? Where is it, Mary? Say it again.
Down thyself.
Wait, what verse is it?
5.
Read it again, Mary.
Thou shalt not bow down.
Bow down thyself to them.
To
That
them,
means when you do your devotional time,
Come on, Josh.
nor
just not in a church. This extends
Anywhere.
when you're home, when you're praying.
Mhm.
We did this not knowing.
That's right.
We used to pray
That's right.
nor
because that,
Hold on.
as many religious movies as we watch, we probably wouldn't have admitted it until now. But we
That's
thought we were praying to a white man.
We didn't know either. We're not
But now
better-
we're
we're not better than you.
able
We're trying
we're
to,
able to admit that we were wrong.
Yeah, And that's why we're on the air, to show you.
So let's put the Bibles aside. Keep them open in Genesis 20. I want to finish that before we close. Exodus 20.
So,
We're going to go into, hold on.
so then it's your own pride if you can't listen to the words of the Bible instead of a man.
Christian education, part 2.
Four stages of theological education.
Read it. 4 stages.
Throughout church, just bring that a little this way. Okay, good. Right
Read
there.
the heading first.
4 stages of theological education.
Read.
Throughout church history, there have been 4 stages of theological education. They are
Episcopal.
episcopal, monastic, scholastic, and seminarian. Seminarian, pastoral. Let's briefly examine each one.
Episcopal.
Episcopalia. The theology, I knew the word Episcopalia. Episcopala. Their theology in the practice age, 3rd to 5th centuries, we called, what did I just say?
Episcopal.
All right, because of the leading theologians of the day were bishops. This system was marked by the training of bishops and priests on how to perform the various rituals and liturgies of the church. Sorry. Okay.
So, in other words, in this time, this is when the pagan system of mechanical belief was beginning. When people began robotically how to operate in an assembly. Read.
Monastic. That's what I said. All right. The monastic stage of theological education was tied to the ascetic and mystical life. It was taught by monks living in monastic communities, and later cathedral schools.
So, monastic or monks. So, who are monks? Are those people that we see in like religious artwork with their hair cut like a halo? So these monks were technically like pastors today, the closest thing, because these are people who went to monasteries and who these are technically almost like scribes and Pharisees. These were people who pretty much were supposedly supposed to know the Bible back and forward.
Mm-hmm.
Read.
Monastic, I say.
Monastic
schools were founded in the 3rd century.
Uh-huh.
These schools sent missionaries to uncharted territories after the 4th century.
So now we're getting a little into the origin of Christian missions. Modern Christian missionaries are not like Paul, Peter, James, John, and the apostles. These were men who learned in the furnace of life.
That's right.
These were men who learned, who were spontaneous and led by the Spirit. These were not men who were intellectually taught, educated speakers, or mechanical teachers. The apostles were spontaneous and led by the Holy Spirit. Theological training stops you from being spontaneous. It turns you into a mechanical person.
During this age, the Eastern Church Fathers became accepted in Platonic thought. They held to the misguided view that Plato and Aristotle were schoolmasters whose techniques could be used to bring men to Christ. Though they did not intend to lead people astray, their heavy reliance on these pagan philosophers severely diluted the Christian faith.
So, in other words, out east, what they would call the Eastern Church became heavily influenced by Aristotle and Plato, who were pagan Greek philosophers. Read.
Since many of the church fathers were pagan philosophers and orators prior to their conversions, the Christian faith soon began to take on a philosophical bent.
So, in other words, due to the fact that the majority of the church fathers, so-called church fathers, were philosophers and Stoics before they became believers, so-called believers, the teaching of the church and the training became less practical, spiritual, and spontaneous, and more robotic, mechanical, and abstract or philosophical. Philosophical teaching is non-practical. Read.
Since many of the church fathers were pagan philosophers and, read that, the Christian faith soon began to take on a philosophical bent. Justin Martyr, 165, one of the most influential Christian teachers of the 2nd century, dressed in the garb of a philosopher, Justin believed that philosophy was Ahayah's revelation to the Greeks. He claimed that Socrates, Plato, and others had the same standing for the Gentiles as Moses had for the Jews.
So, in other words,
wow.
You notice how your pastor will quote pagan or quote theologians?
They really do. They really do. Come on.
And we probably haven't got to that part of I think it's in this chapter. But they are taught in seminary to quote theologians more than they are taught to quote the Bible. Actually, really, in theological school, you're not really taught the Bible. You're taught what a bunch of old dead theologians said about the Bible.
There you go. After AD 200, Alexandria became the intellectual.
Start that again.
After AD 200, Alexandria became.
So Alexandria is in Egypt. God destroyed Egypt.
Come on.
Think about that. Read.
Became the intellectual capital of the Christian world as it had been for the Greeks. A special school was formed there in AD 180. This school was the equivalent of a theological college.
So, in other words, in about the early 200s, 200 years after the death and resurrection of Christ.
That's right.
Come on. The first, what we would call seminary, was founded in Egypt. Okay. Again, seminarial training does the most harm to people than anything else.
That's right. In Alexandria, the institutional study of Christian doctrine.
The institutional. Think about this.
Prison.
So institutional meaning what is backed by the state.
Come on.
You ever wonder why it is you only hear the same thing all the time in church? Because it's not so much what the church or the pastor teaches, it's the government that gives you the ability to have the church that you pay your rent to.
Come on.
Right? Whenever you pay your rent every month, you have to give, research this, it's true. If you record your messages or if you are required in churches nowadays, in any church, to record messages.
That's right.
Why? Because when you go to the IRS to pay your bill,
Mm-hmm.
they will ask for your tapes to make sure you are keeping in line with the guidelines they gave you
501c3
before they gave you the church,
Mhm.
that building to
That's right.
to govern.
Very good, Josh.
Not to be a pastor, but more of a governor to keep everyone in a line or a thinking line straight. So you're not, as a pastor, really there to be spontaneous and teach the truth. You're set up there to keep people under the government.
And from the truth.
That's why
That's right.
they teach you to sign up for the military or to pray for your government. Why would a church teach you that it's scriptural to serve in an army,
Mhm.
the military,
And murders.
or pray for your president when none of that is in the Bible?
That's right. Okay. Alexandria became the intellectual capital of the Christian world, as it had been for the Greeks. A special school, okay. In Alexandria, the institutional study of Christian doctrine began.
Mm-hmm.
Origin,
Origin.
185 to 54. One of the school's early and most influential teachers was deeply influenced by pagan philosophy. He was a colleague of Plato's, the father of Neoplatonism, and drew much from his teaching. According to Neoplatonic thought, an individual must ascend through the different stages of purification in order to attain to oneness with the Most High. Origen was the first to organize key theological concepts into a systematic theology.
So, in other words, based on this pagan philosophical idea that you have to ascend through levels to get to the Most High, instead of just having a one-on-one relationship with Him. Think about what that. In other words, you have to go through different levels. That's a pagan concept in itself. God never told you to go through levels to get to Him in the Bible.
That's right.
God says, just deal with me. Christ is our mediator, the Father, right?
Come on.
You don't need people. Honestly, you don't need people to interfere with you. With God and you can deal with each other. You don't need levels or people in your way.
Come on.
Read.
After Origen's death, Christian schools disappeared. The theological education reverted back to the episcopal forms. Bishops were trained by personal contact with other bishops. The sum and the substance of clerical learning at this time was the study of Gregory and Great's pastoral theology. Greeks. Okay.
Read.
Gregory taught bishops how to be good pastors. By the mid-8th century, bishop schools were founded in the 10th century.
So these theological colleges and seminaries. This is the history of how this tradition became settled in the earth. Read.
Gregory taught bishop. Okay. By the mid-8th century, bishop schools were founded in the scholastic, right?
Uh-huh.
The third stage of theological education owes much to the culture of the university. By 1200,
So scholastic means school. So
right,
so again, the training you get in seminary is much like a school. It's boring, it's repetitive, it's abstract. Not much you really learn in school you ever really use in life, right?
right,
Maybe math. That's about the only thing they teach you that you have to know, right? Because you're not going to write essays and papers throughout your life, so all that stuff is pretty much useless.
mm-hmm,
So honestly, school and seminary, secular schools and seminaries are the same. They teach you a lot of educational and intellectual stuff that is useless to you. And it makes you feel as if you know, right? Because you're educated, you're intellectual, right?
wow.
It makes you think you know stuff when you really know nothing.
By 1200, a member of the cathedral schools had evolved into universities. The University of Bulgaria in Italy was the first university to appear. The University of Paris came in a close second, followed by Oxford. The University of Paris became the philosophical and theological center of the world at that time. It would later become the seat of the Protestant seminary. Higher education was the domain of the clergy.
So higher education and not spirituality.
That's right.
In other words, the a pastor has to be intellectual above spiritual.
Wow. Wow.
That's good for now.
You sure?
Are you sure?
We can finish the page. Finish that page.
Yeah, just read up.
No, here. I mean,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
Yo, just finish the
Okay.
to seminarian.
Are we on? We're not on this page. We're here, I think. Right.
Right there.
Right. Contemporary theology cut its teeth on the abstractions of Greek philosophy. The University
Of what philosophy?
Greek
Stop.
philosophy.
Start that again.
Contemporary theology cut its teeth on the abstractions of Greek philosophy. University academics adopted an Yashayah model of thinking that centered on rational knowledge and logic. Wow.
So, Christian theology and seminarial training centers on logic, abstract logic.
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
Hold on. Rational knowledge and logic.
Rational knowledge and logic. In other words, it focuses on more mental capability than spirituality. It focuses on making you sound educated and smart, and which actually makes the people listening to you unable to deal with real life. Okay, because although I'll say this, rationality and logic are capabilities that we are, God created us with. Rational and logic, those are operations of the mind. But at the same time, we are not to behave or act, let's say like this. You don't have to teach the Bible any way differently than the way you would be
Mm-hmm.
in normal life.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to put on a farce or a game and pretend like you're this super deep, educated, eloquent person
Right.
when you're teaching the Bible. Now that doesn't mean you talk like you're uneducated and you're foolish, bumbling or stumbling over your words all the time. What I'm saying is you don't act or carry yourself differently than what you are, in your everyday life when you teach the Bible, right? But when you deal with pastors, they always act differently than the way they act.
Oh yeah.
They don't act normal,
Yeah, I've met them at a church.
right? They don't. That's not the way a person acts when they're not around the
Totally
church.
different. That's right. The dominating drive in scholastic theology was the assimilation and concatenation of knowledge. For this reason, the Western mind has always been fond of creedal formulations.
So in other words, due to this theological training, the minds of people here in America are molded into a creedal system of religion of operation.
Watch this.
Read.
Watch this. The Western mind has always been watch this. Doctrinal sense and other bloodless abstractions.
So doctrinal statements and abstract things. So because you're not going to sit there and quote a confession of a church to a person. Now you're going to, right? Who honestly cares what a bunch of dead old people said about a confession or wrote in a confession?
Mm-hmm.
That has nothing to do with you or me. See, the church teaches you to be concerned with a whole bunch of abstract stuff that doesn't matter. Who cares what a person wrote 500 years ago about what they thought when it's not in the Bible?
All praises.
Who cares what Martin Luther or John Calvin said? No one cares.
That's right.
Who cares? No one. No one cares about theology. Theology is a man-made word, brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
It's a tool used to encapsulate and enslave you to a church or a religion called Christianity.
That's right.
Now, the Bible does have theology in it, but it has to come from the Bible to be biblical.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Read.
Okay.
So just get rid of all that stuff the church taught you. It's pointless and it gives you nothing.
That's right. One of the most influential professors in the shaping of contemporary theology was Peter Abelard, 1079, 1142. Abelard is partly responsible for giving us modern theology.
Mm-hmm.
His teaching set the table and prepared the menu for scholastic philosophers like Thomas Aquinas. Distinguished by Abelard, the school of Paris emerged as the model for all universities to follow. Abelard applied Aristotelian logic to reveal truth, though even he understood the tension between the two. I do not wish to be a philosopher. If that means I contradict St. Paul, I do not wish to be a disciple of Aristotle. Was it?
Aristotle.
Aristotle. I can't see it. if that means I separate myself from Christ, he also gave me word theology by meaning it has today. Before him, this word was only used to describe pagan beliefs.
Mhm.
Taking the cure from, what's that word again? Yashayah, yeah, right there, Josh. Right here.
Taking
Yeah.
his
Right. You see it? Let me show you.
cue
Yeah,
from Aristotle,
Aristotle. Okay.
Abelin mastered the pagan philosophy, art of dialectic, logical disputation of truth. He applied the art
Well,
of
these boys did that
to
study,
the
haven't you?
scriptures. Christian theological education never recovered from Abelin's influence. Abelin is still in the bloodstream. Aristotle, Abelin, Aquinas all believe that reason was the gateway to divine truth,
Wow.
not spirituality,
Reason.
meaning
Explain, John. What do you mean reason?
sound being educated.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, they use that scripture.
So in other
Let us
words,
come
only
together
an
and reason
educated
together.
only an educated person can teach you the Bible.
Oh, wow. This is so true. That's why they keep you out of it, Mary, if you're spiritual. That's why.
So from
you didn't go to
the
our school,
beginning
did
of
you?
Western University
Yeah,
education was involved the fusion of pagan and Christian elements. So let's close
Well, that's good, Josh.
Exodus 20, verse,
Where we going, Josh?
what was it? Verse 6,
Is it 6?
No, verse 5.
verse
5.
5.
Thou shalt, no, we read that, Mary.
No, we didn't.
Oh, thou shalt not bow down thyself to them, nor serve them, for I, the Most High, thy power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and shewing mercy unto thousands of them that love me, and keep he
Thou
shows
shalt
mercy.
not take.
Wait, and keep my commandments. See, he shows mercy to those who keep his commandments. Get Mary.
Thou shalt not take the name of the power.
Most High, thy power.
Power in vain,
Mm-hmm.
for the power will not hold him guiltless
Mm-hmm.
that take his name.
So in name in vain, Josh, explain it, because a lot of Christians don't understand what that means. Getting his name in vain. They don't, Josh. Run that down, brother. Name in vain. What is vain? I used to think when I was a Christian that it was cursing God's name, and that's part of it. When you say, I didn't want to say Most High, damn it.
Yeah.
Is that what it means, though? I mean, or just using his name where there's no truth?
So, yeah, taking God's name in vain biblically is assigning the name of God or his son to objects or systems that don't
Apply to him, Josh.
apply to him. That's taking his name in vain.
Here you go. Remember the Sabbath day.
What?
Wait, remember the what?
The Sabbath day.
No, forget it.
Remember Sunday.
Sabbath day.
Remember what?
Remember
Sabbath day.
remember Sunday worship.
Sabbath day. To keep it holy.
So the Most High made sure that he put his day in the Bible because he knew that people would change it. He never changed the Sabbath. Men changed it.
All right, come on.
6 days shalt thou labor
Uh-huh.
and do
Mm-hmm.
all thy work. And
But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Most High thy power. The seventh day is Saturn day. We're from Rome, but we call it the Sabbath. We call it the seventh day. Sabbath of the Most High thy power. And thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Most High made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is them in it in them is, and rested the seventh day. The seventh day is the Sabbath. Wherefore the Most High blessed the Sabbath day. No, he blessed Sunday
And hallowed it.
and then hallowed it. So there's only one holy day in the week, folks. Like tonight, Friday night, when we start our Sabbath, until tomorrow night when it gets dark.
Read.
That's the only hope. Okay, Mary. Honor.
Honor thy father and thy mother.
Mm-hmm.
Dishonor.
This honor.
Yeah, don't listen to your parents. Yeah.
Honor thy father and thy mother,
Uh-huh.
that thy days may be long upon the earth.
Land.
Oh,
Okay.
which
So you're supposed to honor your parents because God promises you a long life.
That's right.
So the counter of that is most people who dishonor their parents don't live long.
Wow, that's so true.
Look about it.
Yep. Wasted on drugs, on lesbian, homos, drunks.
Mm-hmm. Read.
with the time of
Fighters,
thy
bulls.
God
Yeah.
giveth thee. Thou shalt not kill.
Thou shalt not
What?
kill. So we know from the words of Christ that we should not have a spirit of hatred towards any person, right? Because
right.
a spirit of hate is equivalent to murder. Because where does murder really start? Murder starts within.
It does. That's right.
That's where premeditation comes in. Hatred can sometimes lead to premeditation and killing or murdering somebody.
That's right.
Thou shalt not commit adultery.
That's committing adultery is sleeping with a married person.
If you're married too, right?
That's not talking about a man desiring a woman.
No, it's not. That's right. That's where the church, oh boy, I'm gonna tell you.
Adultery can only be committed,
With married people.
or fornication can only apply to married people.
That's right.
Because you have to be married to be an adulterer or a fornicator.
That's right.
Thou shalt not steal.
Now, hold it. Wait.
I know you wanted to. Yeah.
Does that mean have sex just to have sex? No. But you should always seek to do those things in the proper order. Because why does God care so much that you sleep with one person?
Mm-hmm.
Although most likely you won't sleep with only one person in your lifetime. But because the more people you sleep with, the more spirits you bring into your vessel.
Wow.
Especially as a female. Men, we get over those things easily. Because it's more of a feeling than an emotion with us.
Mm-hmm.
With women, sex is an emotional connection. And the more men that women deal with, the more spirits and other spirits can possess them.
Wow.
Because so that's why, and that's why a man, even men who sleep with a lot of people turn into animals. They become very animalistic because that's the way they live their life. Women who tend to sleep with more than one person, multiple men, have a lot of psychological disorders.
That's right.
Why?
Issues.
Because their personalities are no longer theirs. Their personalities have been taken over by every man that they have slept with. And actually, their personality is a mirror of the man or the men they have had inside of their bodies.
Absolutely.
That's why God doesn't want you fornicating or using your body as a sexual tool. Now, does that only mean you'll deal with only one person? You'll probably deal with many people. But it's more mentally healthy to only seek out one person to be married to. than to do it the wrong way and damage yourself. Again, God doesn't write these laws to stop you from enjoying yourself. He wants you to enjoy yourself the way he does. He never does anything to harm you or restrict you.
Never.
He just wants you to have the most optimal enjoyment out of your life, the way he designed it to be.
Absolutely.
Finish, Mom. Thou shalt not.
Thou shalt not steal.
So you should not have a spirit of covetousness, which is another commandment. Because where does stealing originate, really? From coveting.
That's right.
The only reason a person steals is really they covet something they don't have,
That's right.
right?
Yes.
And we know that addiction can lead to people stealing, like being an alcoholic,
Mhm.
being a drug addict can cause you to steal from your family.
Yes, sir.
Being a sex addict can cause you to steal from your family, right?
Yes, sir.
A lot of things can cause you to steal. But again, brothers and sisters, this all starts with us. When are we going to take responsibility and own up to bad things we do and stop them? Simply say no,
That's it.
right? Sin is, let me say it like this. Sin is as simple as saying no. You are your biggest enemy. Really, you are. Satan has really nothing to do with you. Satan is so powerless that he can't touch you unless you permit him to.
That's right.
So if you don't permit him to, what can he do to you?
Nothing.
Plain and simple. Finish, Mom?
Thou shalt not bear false witness.
So what is bearing false witness equivalent to? Doing what?
Come on. Talking about someone that's not
No, what's the other word? The L word.
Slit.
Lying.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Lying.
false witness is lying.
Right.
We
Very
ought
good.
not to have a spirit of lying in anything, especially when we deal with the Bible.
That's right.
And when we deal, because the Bible says to put away lying in Romans 12:17
Mhm.
and speak the truth with
Mhm.
every man,
That's right. That's right.
right?
Mhm.
So we should have a spirit of honesty, utter honesty,
Thou shalt
even when it's
Wait.
uncomfortable for us to be honest.
That's-
We
that's
should
the
not
best time.
bear,
That's
because bearing false witness gives us a bad image.
right. Yes,
If
you're
you
right.
lie to a person, how can that person trust you?
You can't.
Right? You
That's why I
can't trust.
nobody in this part because everybody lies when you talk to them.
How can you can't trust a person who doesn't tell you the truth,
That's right.
because we're designed to be truthful.
Mhm.
We're not designed to lie.
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house.
Read.
Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife.
So we should not. You should not desire your neighbor's house or his family, his wife.
That's
Read.
right. That's right.
Nor his manservant,
Nor his business,
or his maidservant, nor his ox,
nor his car, his vehicles, his oxen.
ass,
The things he uses to, like, oxen and asses are like vehicles. So don't covet your neighbor's vehicles, your neighbor's possession.
nor anything that is thy neighbor's.
So if there's any confusion, God, the Most High, made sure he told Moses, tell these people, don't covet anything. That covers everything. Don't covet
Now,
anything.
where's the biggest covenant sin in the world? In the Christian church. The pastor pulls up with a new car, and the bishops, they all want a new car.
And everyone starts comparing and
And they
feeling
start
less
competing.
than.
That's right.
So
That's right.
we hope that was a blessing, brothers and sisters. We certainly enjoyed
Bringing truth to you.
more information to you. Again,
Sunday, Illuminati. Tune in.
brothers and sisters, again, nothing we say here is designed to hurt or harm you. We're trying to spiritually inspire you to dig deeper and really look into the reason
Yes,
you do
sir.
certain things,
Yes, sir.
religiously speaking, if you're deal with
Let
Christianity.
me say something real quick too, John, before we go off.
We don't want to hurt you. We're here
No
to
way.
help you.
Right. All of a sudden, I'm meeting a lot of Caucasian people, like we came in, right, Mary? Sorry, Josh, to this church 10 years ago. even at Walmart, I'm starting to throw information out all over the place. And a lot of white people are agreeing. They're starting to agree that the church is not telling them the truth. You know we're in the last days. Now we're in the last of the last days. We are way past the halfway mark of Jacob's trouble, Yahudah. So you better get ready. I want to say something in love to our viewers. If you're in debt, get out of debt. This is not the time to try to get rich. Paul says, those who try to be rich fall into the snare of the devil. Paul says, I learned whatever state I'm in to be content, whether I'm a base, I'm down, nothing, or I'm prospering. I'm still content. Whatever state I find myself in. Shalom.
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 Close it out, Josh.
Mom. Start, Mom.
I didn't turn out to
Trouble.
I didn't start it.